Before I wrap up though, there were some other recent Colombian news items I wanted to touch on. For starters, over the last couple of months at the time of recording, there have been some significant developments in the realm of US-Colombia relations, or perhaps more aptly, presidential relations. Namely, President Petro's reputation in the White House has recently experienced a sharp decline. In April 2025, for instance, Petro publicly announced that he believed that his US visa had been revoked, possibly due to diplomatic tensions. Though not explicitly stated, this likely refers, at least in part, to his political stance during the aforementioned deportations that occurred at the beginning of the year. Whatever the case, the US State Department, acting under privacy laws, would neither confirm nor deny this repeal. Months later, however, Petro would find himself in another controversy that would induce a public response from the department. In September of 2025, they would officially announce plans of a visa revocation due to his, quote, reckless and incendiary actions. Specifically, this was referring to an occurrence during a New York protest whereby Petro encouraged US soldiers involved in the Gaza conflict to disobey US orders and instead choose to, quote, obey the orders of humanity. Whilst this statement specifically was the basis for the State Department's decision to revoke his visa, Petro has notably voiced staunch criticism of the Trump administration on numerous other occasions also. The following month, for instance, Petro would accuse the administration of violating international law through the bombing and potential murder of Colombian citizens during a series of boat strikes beginning in September. The strikes were officially described by the US to be targeting narco-traffickers travelling through a known trafficking route off the coast of Venezuela. It was soon reported, however, that a Colombian fisherman named Alejandro Carranza was killed in one of the attacks, despite having no ties to the drug trade. Unfortunately, though verified by several large media outlets, Colombia is unable to formally establish a chain of responsibility due to a lack of legal confirmation from the US on the matter at the time of recording. Still, in response to the claim attacks on Colombian boats more broadly, Petro would act by ordering the suspension of intelligence sharing from all levels of public security forces in Colombia. He stated that the measure would be maintained for as long as the missile strikes on boats in the Caribbean persisted, although this was quickly rolled back by officials in his government. Speaking of fallouts, Petro himself has recently endured another significant blow in US relations. Namely, both he and his family, along with a key minister, Armando Benedetti, have been sanctioned by the US Department of Treasury. Essentially, this means that the designees are blocked from engaging in transactions with anyone in the US and are not allowed to access or transfer any assets they may personally have in the US, such as bank accounts, real estate, and investments. These assets are also blocked from anyone in the US without authorization, effectively freezing them. Unlike Petro's visa revocation, the decision to enforce this measure was not attributed to any particular incident, but rather more broadly Petro's alleged inability to satisfactorily curb drug trafficking from Colombia. Specifically, the Treasury states that Petro has allowed drug cartels to flourish and refused to stop this activity. Petro, in response, however, strongly rebuked this claim, stating in Spanish that "my government has seized more cocaine than any in the entire history of the world," and that what the US Treasury is doing is an arbitrariness typical of an oppressive regime. Whatever the case, it should be noted that US sanctions on sitting political leaders are generally a rare measure only employed in exceptional cases. This is even more true for major bilateral partners such as Colombia, where diplomatic consequences carry greater weight. The fact that Petro has been sanctioned therefore signals a severe mistrust of his government from Washington. In tandem with this decision, the US has also announced the withdrawal of much of its financial aid to Colombia, including anti-narcotics initiatives, human development programs, and security cooperation by an estimated 20% reduction or more. For all of Petro's clashes with the Trump administration, however, controversy has also recently boiled back on Colombian soil for another significant political leader. In July 2025, ex-President Alvaro Uribe would become the subject of a high-profile criminal trial based around allegations of bribery with paramilitary groups. As mentioned earlier in the video, Uribe was alleged to have ties to these groups even before being elected. Investigations into these ties would persist throughout his tenure and would also extend into his post-presidential years when he was serving as senator. It was at this point that a lawyer of Uribe would allegedly bribe former paramilitary members to retract or change testimonies they'd given that linked Uribe to their group during the parapolitics scandal. The allegation of this act and its implications of paramilitary ties would serve the basis of the July 2025 trial, whereby Uribe would ultimately be sentenced to 12 years of house arrest, fined over $500,000 and banned from holding public office for several years. For many Colombian citizens, this would all prove to be highly controversial. Though a polarizing figure, Uribe is famously remembered by many as an invaluable asset for strengthening security in Colombia and defeating guerrillas. Furthermore, many would argue that his trial was driven by politics rather than impartial justice, describing it as political persecution. Whatever the case, Uribe's conviction would later be overturned in October 2025 when Superior Court of Bogotá claimed structural deficiencies in the trial. Specifically, the premise of the original judgment was described as being too vague, while key evidence was said to have been obtained improperly. For many of Uribe's supporters, this overturning has been hailed as a rightful vindication and a correction of judicial bias. Despite the acquittal, however, Uribe may be open to further legal manoeuvres should additional appeals emerge.